She was the one who had to make her mark by being louder and noisier than everybody else. That was really her life when she was younger. Very strong character, but she was also really funny, making the whole family laugh and playing practical jokes on us all. And Alice is our daughter, and she was 23 when she was murdered.
She went on holiday with a girlfriend of hers, to Sri Lanka. And her friend had known this guy when she was herself student in Edinburgh. And then he saw these pictures of Alice, and apparently he said, "I like the look of that girl, will you introduce us?" He was a soldier. He was out actually serving out in Afghanistan at the time. We first met them, didn't we, when they came down together. Looking back on it, I don't think there was anything about him that raised red flags that made me think, there's something I don't like about this guy.
Initially, she was really positive. You know, she thought he was the one. But very quickly, after he came back from his final tour of duty, she started to be less satisfied with him. Her best friend, Jen, who she'd been friends with for several years, Alice said to me, I'm not speaking to Jen anymore. Harry was what she called him, and Dylan. Harry told me that I mustn't speak to her anymore because she's a toxic person. What had happened was there'd been an argument. Alice and Jen had had an argument, which we later discovered had been caused by him, and he'd fueled it up. And then he'd sort of come out on Alice's side against Jen and told her what a terrible person Jen was. And so suddenly Alice's big confidant, who's her friend, who she would always say, what do you think about this? Suddenly she hasn't got that friend anymore. He was quite controlling about wherever she went. So even though he didn't say, you must not go to this party, if Alice went to a party and he knew she was there, he'd sort of roll up and say, I've got some unexpected leave. Let's go somewhere ourselves. And he'd take her away from the party. So all the things were sort of trying to isolate her from her friends.
Other things, like things that had seemed like compliments at first. Send me a picture of what you're wearing, that's nice, and that sort of thing. And gradually turning in him sort of needing to know, wanting to know, becoming this controlled.
She'd had a message from a girl on Facebook again who'd said, do you know that your boyfriend is on Tinder? He liked me on Tinder and wanted to start going out with me, so I did a search for who he was and found out there he is on Facebook, and he says he's in a relationship with you. And I think that was the point where Alice thought, no, this relationship's not going to work. He didn't want to accept the relationship was over. He wouldn't even accept her ending it. He'd go, no, it'll be all right. Come on, I'll change. It'll be different. And she found it really hard to get her out of the relationship at all to start with.
She eventually did end the relationship. And of course, that's when the real stalking began. And that's when he started blitzing her with phone messages. They were a mixture of the sort of emotional blackmail, crying down the phone how he couldn't live without her, and also the threats. His style was, if I were a bad guy, I'd do this, but I'm not, so I won't. So they were veiled threats, but they were threats nonetheless.
One of the things he did was message other people and ask them to pass messages on to Alice.
The thing that brought it all to a head was she had gone home as usual, but she was on her own in the house that evening. And then she goes to bed and it's dark, and suddenly there's this knock on the back window. When she opens the curtains, he's there, it's him outside, and he's left some flowers and some chocolates on the outside windowsill, and he's got his hands like this. He's backing off as if to say, okay, I'm going now. And then on the way back, driving back up to Edinburgh, he leaves a phone message saying, I came here just to tell you that I'm not going to kill you. I wouldn't think of killing you. And he says this, 7 or 8 times, I'm not going to kill you. And it's not a threat to kill her, but for goodness sake, he's saying it, he's thinking it. And it was that message. A friend came round to her late after that happened in the middle of the night, and she called 101 and got through, and that was her first message to the police. And it's heartrending when you listen to it. She's almost apologetic in her tone for calling the police. The call handler was badly trained. They identified it as harassment rather than stalking, but it was also identified as medium risk, not high risk. And as I understand it, one of the reasons for that was because he was living 100 miles away. And so to come and, for example, put flowers and chocolates on the window is a 5-hour round trip. So he's not much of a danger, is he, because he's not living close by. You have to turn that round. You have to say, hang on a minute, this guy is spending 5 hours just to come and put flowers and chocolates on the windowsill. This guy is obsessed. But he actually gave her the choice of two things, and one was to contact a lawyer and try and get an order from an injunction, thank you. But he then gave her a second option, which was that we can issue a PIN, police information notice, which existed in those days. And he told her that if she did that, and if he ever came near her or contacted her again, he'd be arrested. That's what he said, and of course she believed that, and so they issued the PIN. And she felt safe. For the next week, her colleagues at Sky said they had the old Alice back. You know, she had her confidence and everything, and she really felt protected because of that. He then sends her a package, and this package, well, it's got a few things like T-shirts he'd left, and he writes this letter, and when I read it, you can't help reading it. It's threatening, even though it's not directly threatening. And it ends up, and I'm sending them back to you because you now belong to another man. We are quite convinced, because he knew that. He knew other things he couldn't have known otherwise. He put spyware on her phone. It was never proved because her phone was never found, but it was quite clear to us that he was spying on WhatsApp messages.
She phoned up the police again and said, I'm phoning up to report a breach of this PIN notice that had happened. And the police officer who answered this didn't link it to the previous PIN notice. He just put it down as harassment again, but a completely separate offence. And so it was recorded that she didn't want him arrested, and they didn't arrest him. And she was just so down, because she said, Mum, it's just never going to stop. He's going to always be stalking me. And I said to her, you know, because she was so down, I just felt I had to say something to make her feel better. And I said, well, he will. You just keep ignoring him and he'll stop. And do you know what? I actually believed that was true. And of course, it's not, you know.
And I mean, it was literally 5 days after that second call to the police that he killed her.
I just felt really guilty. You know, I felt that I'd caused her death. I came to realise that actually quite a lot of people had felt the same thing, that something they'd said or not done had contributed. And I think that's one of the things that made us realise that we need to educate everybody about it. So,
and of course, there's many different ways in which people can stalk. Many other repeated actions can constitute stalking anyone that is intruding into someone's life in an unwanted way. Another way to look at this is about the control, and certain things threaten that control. So in Alice's case, well, the first thing is, of course, ending the relationship. So all the control that was going on within the relationship can't be done anymore. What's another trigger? Well, he discovers that she's going out with someone else. So suddenly, why is he stalking her? Well, he's not going to get back with her again. And that motive is turning from a sort of trying to get back to a sort of revenge. And all of this is raising the level. And I think that's why it's so critical that when a stalking protection order particularly is breached, it's telling you that you're at a high level of risk. And that's one reason why the stalking protection orders are so important, because breaching them is a criminal offence, and we just have to make sure we follow up on that.